Another case of charges being dropped to an Army superior that wouldn't go along with the COVID mandates, showing a lot more corruption than we originally thought. Today, join me, Catherine Christensen. Thank you so much for joining me, talking about this case. And this goes into some of the cases that you've been doing. But I wanted to talk about, because many people, I wasn't aware of this, many people aren't aware of just how deep this went. Tell me, how many military head honchos were filtered through before somebody actually agreed to mandate vaccines in the Canadian Armed Forces?
Well, this is quite interesting because I've been talking about it for a couple of years. It was a pattern I picked up on, and I was a conspiracy theorist until now it's actually it's showing up. So what happened was this General Vance was the chief of defense staff when COVID first started. Mm-hmm. Vaccines come along. He's ordered to get 100% vaccination rate to set an example. He says no, because what if there's something wrong with this vaccine? Remember, they were only giving Moderna.
Or even though you've given everything over to the military, you still have rights, yeah. Correct?
Yeah. And he also said that he wasn't going to use his people as an experiment, and that he was charged with sexual misconduct charges. So they put in just mysteriously
show up
over an affair that had been well known within CAF for decades. It was nothing new to anybody. So they bring in Admiral MacDonald. And within a couple of weeks, he's removed. But I have his briefing note. That's a memo that is written for the top general to give him advice before he makes a decision. So I have that briefing note, and it says you cannot bring in a mandate for legally, medically, morally, ethically. It can't be done. So he said, no, I'm not doing it.
So they found a reason to fire him, give him a charge of some sort.
Yeah, he was removed on sexual misconduct charges, which he was cleared of. He was never convicted of anything. And then Wayne Eyre is brought in as acting chief of defense staff. He gets a briefing note from General Cadieux, and it says, you can't do this. No, can't do this. General Cadieux was removed on sexual misconduct charges.
I mean, it's comical. It's comical at this point because, I mean, it's so corrupt. It just feels like corruption. Finally, we get one guy. How many do we go through before one guy finally said, okay, and I'll do it, and no charges came on to him?
Okay, so then Eyre says, so Cadieux his charges were stayed yesterday. Mm-hmm. So nothing happened with that, except removed him from the job. So Eyre comes in, he's acting. He brings in the mandate in October of 2021 for the military, and he gets promoted to full CDS. So he gets rewarded on top of it.
Do the thing, you get the thing. Yeah, we get it.
Exactly. So General Fortin was in charge of the vaccine rollout for civilians, and he said no to a mandate. He was charged with sexual misconduct charges that he was cleared of in a courtroom. And last week, General Whalen who was head of human resources for the Canadian Armed Forces, was facing charges at a court-martial. And suddenly last week, in the middle of his court-martial, they withdrew the charges.
Wow.
But it was related to, again, improper behavior of a general.
Yeah.
So
it reeks.
They're wiping them out.
So to me, it reeks of corruption, and mm-hmm. this is what we're seeing. And this is, after all these years and what's going on now. I understand you're now involved in two big tort cases. So that would be like, I guess, the equivalent of class action.
It is similar. It's that big of a case. It's just that the only people who would benefit from, say, a settlement or a win would be the named plaintiffs, not people couldn't apply after we win to say that they want.
I see. So mm-hmm. You had one with over 300, and that got started. So now there's another one with another.
Yeah. So I had a wait list and people that wanted. I had almost 1,000 people wanting in, but it was a really tight timeline because we were up against the statute of limitations. And only 128 managed to get all their paperwork and everything in to be named on the second one.
And what is exactly the case?
So it's the same case as the first one, and it's basically an abuse of power lawsuit. We're saying that the Canadian Armed Forces went too far and abused the chain of command, abused their people, and used the wrong tactics, abused their rights, abused them. There was physical torture involved. There was psychological torture involved to implement the mandates for COVID-19. So we've got people in the lawsuit who have never been vaccinated. Some have partial vaccination, some have full vaccination, some are vaccine injured. Some were removed under less than honorable circumstances from the CAF, some voluntarily released to avoid that punishment, some were medically released because it's not about COVID-19 vaccine. The lawsuit is about, they brought in the mandate and then all the abusive things that the chain of command did for the next couple of years afterwards. It violated their rights. You cannot harass people. You cannot coerce people. There was no informed consent. There's 31 claims that we're making against the CAF.
So to talk about this, today we have Logan coming in to address what these abuses were. Logan, thank you so much for joining me first and foremost.
Oh, you're welcome. Absolutely.
And so what happened? You're part of this second tort case now, one of the 100 and some odd people involved in this. And what are the claims that you're putting forward? And tell us your story. How did this go down?
So I spent, I guess I'll start from the beginning, as most people normally do. I spent most of all of my adult life in the military. I was in for 17 years and right out of high school, and I was an avionics technician. And so throughout the course of my my career, we were taught all kinds of different things. And one of those things is, not to follow orders that are manifestly unlawful. And the second I read this order, this mandate that came down, I was like, there's no way this is a legal order, especially after the court rulings with regards to a previous sergeant that had declined an anthrax vaccine on the grounds that it was perceived to be dangerous. It turns out later that it was indeed dangerous. And so when I read that, and I read the mandate, and I read what they wanted me to do, which was initially just to put our status into this program called Monitor Mask the military uses. This program is not safeguarded very well for privacy at all. And I thought to myself, not only are they asking us to, violate our own medical privacy, they're also telling us we have to take drugs that we may or may not want to take. And so I knew this was not lawful, and I had a lot of people. I wasn't a particularly high rank. It was just a master corporal. And some of the corporals that I worked with, my subordinates and some who were not my direct subordinates, they were not comfortable with these shots. And they told me that they were not comfortable with these shots. And I told them, in no uncertain terms, that I'm also not comfortable with these shots and I don't plan to take them. And I don't want to use the word underestimated, but I sort of underestimated the military's resolve on this. I thought, we're so far undermanned. There's no way that they're going to follow through with this. So I decided to just, put my foot down and bring it to the chain. One of the first things I did was I tried to get a meeting with our SAMIO, which is a Air Force term for air maintenance officer. And so I tried to get a meeting with him because he was the closest that I could access sort of to the CO. So I expressed my concerns to him first. This was actually before the deadline for the mandate. So I told him, this isn't lawful. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, you can't do this. You can't force people to take medications. You don't have the authority. And he basically didn't answer any of my questions and just told me, it's an order, too bad. So, they carried on. And one of the first things they did, and this is one of the things that is being claimed in my particular case, one of the first things they did was implement testing, forced testing. Now, forced testing, medical tests, is also against the military's rules. I didn't decide to put up a fight on that one, but I did communicate with the master warrant officer that, if I wanted to fight you guys on this, you wouldn't be allowed to test me either.
So when you say testing, you're talking about that invasive when we first
like
the one that goes way up in the, yeah, that was,
you just push that thing in your brain.
I've had to do that once, and I would never want to do it again. Especially,
it's horrible. It's awful.
I'm guessing they were trying to impose this on a regular basis, so you'd have to, because you said testing, so this is.
Yeah, so they wanted us to do this 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Oh, wow.
And what was especially insulting about it was they decided the room where they were going to do this testing. They chose a room that was immediately outside of the main hangar door. And they made us all line up there in plain view of everybody else and wait for our testing. So it was sort of, we were being made an example of. It was a bit of a humiliation ritual for us.
Mm-hmm.
And it exposed our medical status as well to our peers, because it's like, oh, look, they're all lined up over there to get their testing. They're the unvaccinated people.
Right. They should be discreet about it.
Yeah, they were supposed to be discreet about it. I suspect it was intentional, but I have no way to prove that.
Well, to me, it sounds a bit like a struggle session. I mean, in all,
it kind of was. Yeah, we were sort of the, the unwashed, right? We sort of became these like pariahs at work, where everybody was, I don't want to say instructed to avoid us, but everybody was avoiding us. And the next stage began, which was the actual administrative procedure stages began. So they issued written warnings, and for each of these stages, we were allowed to present a memo to the CO, basically stating our case, sort of defending ourselves against the allegations. And in each of mine, I told him specifically, and I used the references from the National Defense Act and, at the time, Queen's Regulations and Orders. I don't know if they've changed the name to King's now that we have a king.
They haven't got around to it.
They haven't, of course. They haven't got around to it.
The things they can get around to, but not these.
Yeah. So I showed them the references that explicitly stated that no such authority exists to force anyone to take vaccines or any medications or even medical testing. This authority does not exist in the military. And they didn't listen to me, so they carried on. And I did not. Some of my peers and subordinates applied for religious exemptions. All were denied, of course. They had the military's various chaplains essentially tell everyone that their claims were legitimate and deny them. So I didn't apply for a religious exemption, not only because I felt it was morally wrong, being that I'm not religious, but also that, I took the stand that you guys don't have this authority. This is an unlawful order. And I thought, like I said before, I sort of underestimated them, thinking there's no way they're going to follow through with this. This is insane. This is, one of the most insane things I've ever seen the military try to do. And if you've been in the military for any period of time, there's lots of insane things that they do.
Yeah.
But sure enough, they followed through with it. My CO told me all sorts of terrible things about my character that were untrue. I was accused of, being disloyal to Canada. I was accused of having moral shortcomings, and ultimately I was let go on a 5F release, which is one of the ones that Catherine mentioned, that is not a dishonorable discharge, but maybe a less than honorable discharge. It's referred to as an administrative burden. And I thought it was kind of a strange situation because, as I mentioned before, I joined the military when I was very young, and I was very young, and I was very idealistic. And, I joined the military because I believed in fighting for the rights of Canadians and protecting the things that are in our charter and doing what's right. And then ultimately, that's what cost me my job, was doing what was right and protecting the rights of my fellow soldiers and myself.
Doing the right thing. That's what they don't want in our Canadian Armed Forces. I mean, well, going all the way from the top brass being, accused of sexual impropriety and charges actually being laid, eventually being stayed, as we saw now, all the way down the ranks to yourself and the other 100 some odd people that are involved in this tort case. So, Catherine, where are we with this case so far?
So the 1.0, as we call it, which was the original one we filed in June with the 330, we have, there's been a statement of defense. I did a reply, and we are now going to serve them with our affidavit of documents next week, which is basically a list of all our evidence. We're at 1,400 different documents and counting.
Wow.
So yeah, our affidavit of documents is a novel. It's a thick book already, and so then that will go from there towards seeing what the evidence the Crown has, and then into doing depositions. So we'll be calling General Eyre. The 2.0 lawsuit we have filed, and the statement of defense on that one, they have not asked for an extension on that one, is due probably next Friday. They could stretch it to Monday. Yeah, I'm expecting a cut and paste from the first one to give us the same defense, and I'll give them the same reply.
And what are the hopes here? What are the implications of winning this case with the Canadian Armed Forces?
Mm-hmm. Well, for most of my people, it's not even really about the money. It's about holding the chain of command accountable for what they have done to these people in particular, as well as others who weren't able to participate, and to put them on notice that they are accountable and that the laws of Canada apply to the Canadian Armed Forces. In February, I was in a judicial review, and the Crown stood up and told the justice, this court has no jurisdiction over the Chief of Defense Staff in military matters. And I was like, I'm pretty sure under rule of law that he is answerable to the court. So let's answer that question, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
we would hope
and
that
make them aware.
we hope to see a little bit of accountability in our armed forces. We haven't seen much in our government. Let's hope that we can see some somewhere. And I want to thank you both for putting up this fight. Catherine on the legal side, and Logan, you coming forward with your story. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us, Clyde.